This year, the North Bellarine Film Festival is gearing up for its 2022 program, which will last over 2 days, giving a focus on emerging filmmakers and giving them the opportunity to showcase their work and meet with other creatives over 2 days in November at the Potato Shed in Drysdale, which is Wadawurrung country. The festival is doing things a bit differently this year and will be producing a series of recorded conversations, showcasing the work of some of the emerging filmmaker finalists, all whose creative pieces are featuring in this year's program. Joining me now in the first of this series is Emily Reeve. She studied at Swinburne University in Melbourne, and she's directed her piece Suitcase, which is the story of a small family whose rural home is threatened by a bushfire. Its young protagonist, Tilly, is age 6 in the movie, and she has to make some quick decisions when her grandmother asks her to pack her suitcase before they evacuate. Suitcase's director, Emily, joins me now from Germany. Welcome to you, Emily.
Thank you.
We have a slight delay on the line, so forgive us if we're sort of back and forth a bit. Emily, because you're in Stuttgart at the moment.
Yes, that's correct. A bit of a distance.
What time is it at the moment over there?
Just past 9 a.m. in the morning.
Not too bad. So Emily, I loved this film and the committee absolutely loved it, and congratulations to you for being selected as a finalist.
Thank you so much.
How did you feel when you received that notification?
I was beyond thrilled. I mean, when you make films, the whole idea of them is to get them out there, and most importantly, get them screened so that other people can watch it. And that's the best feeling ever. As well, this festival in particular is definitely an important one for us. It's based in a semi-regional area, which definitely ties into the themes of the film and our project in general.
The film itself does have that theme to it, the bushfire theme that is so important to so many regional Australians. How was it that you first started putting this idea and this concept together?
Well, the context behind it is I was actually in Germany when the bushfires took place. The big one I'm talking about, the season of 2019-2020. So at that time I was here where I am now on an exchange semester. And during that time I was feeling so many things for Australia, but also a big sense of helplessness. I couldn't physically do anything to help out, but it was just racking on my mind constantly. So I did have a script writing class here at the time, and that's where the story kind of first started to come together. And then the other factor is having friends and family back home going through similar situations, and yeah, all of Australia really.
That must have felt very isolating to be somewhere so far from home, kind of watching all of this happen and feeling powerless.
Yeah, that's definitely one way to describe it. On the other hand, a part of me also felt quite reassured in some ways, because the news of what was happening was big news here as well. I would be listening to German radio and they would be talking about what was happening here, and that was great because it felt like the rest of the world cared. Yeah, it still allowed me to kind of keep in touch a bit that way.
You had a really interesting approach, Emily, to this film, because I know that it was important to you to bring a perspective that we wouldn't normally see through the perspective of a child. That I loved that take, because we were seeing so much at that time of people working on the front line and what the first all of the fire crews were going through. What was it about a child's perspective that you felt it was important to bring to life?
I feel like this is kind of true for both a child's perspective and that of the elderly as well, per se, because they're both demographics in society which sadly a lot of the time are seen and not heard, per se. And for our character Tilly, this means that her perspective is also not heard vocally, per se. You see her trying to understand what is happening around her, but she's not talking about it or getting the answers, even from her grandmother, about it. And yeah, I feel like when it comes to domestic situations, when something important is happening, parents, grandparents, they don't have the time to talk to children and explain in a way that gets the message across to them, perhaps in the way that they need it, especially in an urgent situation such as a home evacuation. So for us, this was very much about breaking down that communication line, kind of forcing the viewer into seeing, okay, this is how maybe your child felt in this situation. This is how other children felt. Suddenly their whole world has been thrown out of whack and they just don't really understand. Yeah, so that was really important to us.
You said something really interesting there. You mentioned before that you were wanting to capture Tilly's responses or her point of view without her necessarily saying anything. You wanted to capture her perspective. What do you think that lots of children around that time were going through the bushfires, and what their perspectives actually were?
That's a great question. I think a lot of it, well, I can't speak for them personally, really, but I would assume a lot of those emotions were based around confusion of what was happening, perhaps not being able to articulate fully or even understand the complexities of the situation or the emotions that they're experiencing. For instance, losing your home, your favorite toys, your belongings, that's a big deal. And for a young person to understand the context of it, why it's happened, why me, that's definitely massive. And yeah, for Tilly, it's also very much based around this coming to grips with, okay, this is the situation. I do have to choose what are my most important belongings to take with me, to pack in this suitcase. And then also the idea of, oh, what if I can't take these? What does that mean? Will I never see them again? But of course, it is also bigger than just that. It's bigger than just things. People also lose family and homes and material wealth as well. And all of that is really devastating. But for us, focusing on sentimentality and the significance of just things was really important.
Sentimentality outside of objects. Yeah. Strange concept for a child, I think.
Yeah, but I think kids tend to grip onto sentimentality and things anyway, whether it's their favorite plush toy or their comfort blanket. I think that's a very real thing for most children.
We've got some audio here, which I'd love to play. This is a little bit into the film. This little piece features the lead protagonist, Tilly, who's played by Madison Hammond, and her grandmother, Ruth, played by Fiona Stewart. So this is basically Ruth telling Tilly that they're having to leave. And an interesting thing about this too, Emily, is it doesn't become immediately obvious what the reason is until a few minutes into the film, which I'd love to come back to on if you don't mind. But let's have a listen to this audio courtesy of Suitcase, the film.
Where are we going?
Daddy's going to be here soon. We need to pack some things.
Why?
Everything will be safe here in the suitcase. But we need to leave a bit of room on the top, and only what you really need, okay, Tills?
Why?
Just make sure you leave a wee bit of space on the top so we can put some food in. Move!
Very moving.
Thank you.
What do you think that the dynamic between Ruth and Tilly is at that point? Because it's setting up quite a lot of confusion, I think.
Well, Ruth clearly isn't communicating clearly. Her mind is, completely in another universe because she's assumably just found out that they need to get their things and go. And she's too distracted with that to give Tilly the proper time of day and explain what is happening. The other big thing in this scene, although we just heard the audio, is the body language between Ruth and Tilly. Ruth stops to look at Tilly once during the whole scene, and even then brushes it off, bats it away, because She's got more important things to focus on right now. This is urgent. And this means that Tilly feels like she's not being heard or seen. And I think that's really hard for her, because she can tell that something is happening, but doesn't know what or why, and what that means. And for her, it's also a thing of not quite understanding then the urgency or severity of the situation, which then tumbles into further discourse between them later on, because they're not on the same wavelength about what's happening.
Tilly is quite a strong-willed little girl in this
Yeah.
scene. She's played by Madison Hammond, and as I mentioned before, her grandmother Ruth, played by Fiona Stewart, and later on her father Gary, played by Giustino della Vedova. Let's talk about Madison for a second. So she's the one of the lead roles in this, and she was 6 or 7 when this was filmed, I understand.
I believe she was older. Her character was 6. I think Maddie was 8 or 9, somewhere around there.
Yeah. So Madison Hammond is an Australian actor, and we're going to be speaking to her as well in a few days' time. She was so brilliant in this role. How did you come to cast her and come across her?
Yeah, it was really difficult, actually, our casting process, because we saw so many really wonderful and talented young actresses apply for the role. But ultimately, the decision of going with Maddie was easy, and a lot of that actually came down to the dynamics and chemistry between Ruth and her, so between Fiona and Maddie. So we were fortunate to have been able to cast Fiona ahead of time, and then be able to bring her in to the final auditioning casting process, so that we could really see how they would work together. And that was invaluable, really.
What was Maddie's understanding of this storyline and this narrative?
Maddie had a very strong understanding of it. I think her and her mother, Kylie, had talked through the script and the story quite thoroughly together. And that was also what impressed me, Maddie's emotional understanding, emotional intelligence of the film, which meant that she could have a greater understanding of, okay, my character at this point of the film is doing this, but she's feeling this, therefore I need to act it in this way. And when you're directing, having a child actress in particular understand the subtext and the context is really, really useful, really important.
It brought a lot of depth to her character, I think, because you can't fake that stuff. You could see that she had, I guess, just that emotional connection to what was going on in how she delivers her lines and how she embodies Tilly. She obviously had, I think, just this sense of connection to the story.
Yeah, I think so too. Maddie was terrific.
Let's talk about the location, if you're happy to. This was filmed in Swan Hill, and I understand that this was also, your crew was the graduate class of Swinburne University, and it was crowdfunded. Tell me, how did you come across this farmhouse in Swan Hill? Because it's an amazing house, an amazing scene. Could you tell me a bit about that process?
Yeah, sure. So all of the location work is the results of Mitchell Barkman, our producer, and the terrific effort he put in behind the scenes to source that for us. So he himself is based out of Swan Hill. It's where he grew up and where he runs his own videography business. And it meant that through his connections, family and friends, and the general wider community, he found lots of people putting their hands up left, right and centre, to be honest, saying, oh yeah, you can use my house. And it was really lovely. And the location we settled on and chose to go with in the end, we went with for the character of the house as well as the general location of it. So both convenience and suitability for the story. And filming in Swan Hill, although it's a good 4 hours from Melbourne, it was a really great experience being able to take the whole crew out there, get away from the city, and also get in tune a bit with kind of the regional, rural community lifestyle that is also the context of the film.
You were talking just now about the character of the house, and you're right, it does have this that really unique country Australian feel to it. I think that it added so much to the storyline. And I understand that when you were actually driving out, you used real footage of bushfires at the time that were happening around the area.
Yeah, that's true. They weren't so much bushfires as they were planned burning offs. So it was significantly safer for us to spontaneously pull over and film. But that was also great for us to be able to do that. Yeah, and just one thing I'd like to add on the house, it actually wasn't furnished at all. So everything that you see in the film, that is the house, and I guess the character of it, is purely the work of our very talented production designer. Even, for instance, all of the toys you see in the film, all the plush animals, like, they're not toys that we went out and bought for the film. They're our toys. So that's my childhood plush dingo on the bed, and that's Mitch's koala, and so on. So everything in there also felt sentimental to us.
That's true. And I've read a lot of the preparation that you did for this, and you've clearly weaved a lot of your own narrative through it, right down to your photographs of the crew where you feature yourselves as children. And it sounds like a really tight-knit crew as well. I know that you all knew one another already, but it sounds like it had like a lovely family atmosphere.
Yeah, definitely. We were a small crew by comparison to some other projects, partly because we were traveling quite far away to shoot the project. I think there was maybe about 10 of us in total. And yeah, we all stayed together, and that definitely helped bond us a bit more too.
Yeah. Were you happy with the final result, how it turned out?
Oh, absolutely. As a filmmaker, it can be hard to say, okay, that's good, that's enough, we stop here. But it was actually quite easy with this film to get to that point, because otherwise you can go back and forth over single frame adjustments. It can be quite tedious, but yeah, I'm definitely happy with how Suitcase has shaped up.
Well, congratulations again. The film is Suitcase, and you can check out more information on the film by visiting their Facebook page, facebook.com/Suitcase, the short film. It will screen on the Saturday night of the North Bellarine Film Festival's program. That's on November 19, along with all the other finalists for the Emerging Filmmaker Award. You can head to northbellarine.filmfestival.org to view the program and learn more about the festival itself. Book yourself a ticket. It goes over 2 days, Friday the 18th and 19th of November. There's going to be live music as well, Emily. It's a shame you can't come. Yeah, there's going to be live music by local artist Andrea Robertson. You can pack a picnic and sit in the sunshine at the potato shed between sessions. And I don't know what would be in a German picnic basket, but
definitely pretzels.
Yeah, something like that. Thank you again, Emily, and don't forget you can check out all of our social media at North Bellarine Film Festival. Emily Reeve, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Jessie.